So we're live here. Welcome to our July 8th Empathic Design co-design workshop, and we have a design challenge here of how might we design an empathic culture in our schools. And I'm really excited to have you all here, and thanks for signing up. This is the very first workshop on this topic, so it's kind of like the maiden voyage. So great to test it out with you. And what we want to do is we've been filling out our introductions on Mural. So we'd like to go around and everyone have a chance to introduce themselves. And I'm actually going to share the Mural screen here so we can actually see what everyone's been working on. And let me begin by introducing myself. Let me bring this up here. And there we go, zoom in. And there I am. So I'm Edwin Rutch, Director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy. And for the past 8 years, I've been working on empathy. I was inspired partially by Barack Obama when he first ran for office. He said the country had an empathy deficit. So I said, okay, let's do something about that, and started a website, and now have the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, or cultureofempathy.com website, which is the largest resource, I think, on the internet with around empathy. I've been doing all kinds of different projects, and in the pictures here, this one is not too clear, but that's the, oh, lost some pictures here. That was the empathy tent. We had this empathy tent which I've set up. This is at UC Berkeley. We had a tent on Sproul Plaza, which is the home of the free speech movement. We set up an empathy tent, said we have free speech but nobody's listening. We now need a free empathy movement. So had a bunch of students working on that and doing empathy circle work, and interviewed hundreds of people, of experts, over 300 experts about empathy, and those are on the website. And what I'm really looking to do now is my intention for this workshop is I'm really looking at how do we foster empathy in the world in general. And I'm looking to make connections with people who have that same vision and keep building a movement for fostering more empathy in the world. And I'm also really interested in, this workshop is about how do we do that in the schools. So how do we, and seems to be a lot of interest. I got connected with a group called Live Different. They're in Canada, and they go to 300 schools every year doing these presentations, sort of like rallies and presentations around how to live, in a more caring way. And they want to do workshops. They want to bring in empathy this year. So the next workshop in this series we'll be doing with them. We're looking at how to foster more empathy in the schools. So I like to do a whole series of these kind of design workshops. So this is the launch of this series. So I'm so glad that you've all decided to take part, and I think we're going to have a really, really good time. So. So we can go on to, that's me, so we can go on to the next one. Gray, would you like to?
Hi, I'm Grace Wachowski, and I just met Edwin the other day, so hi again, Edwin.
Hi, Gray.
I am a teacher. I'm also a writer. I have my master's in Hawkins from writing. I'm an activist, so if I sound very exhausted, it's because I was in D.C. until very late last night, walking way farther than my physical ability should have let me walk at the protest in D.C. last night, which is why I did not have my introduction ready today, so I apologize. But I want to see empathy become a trait that is valued and promoted in schools. It's something that, as a teacher, I don't see many administrations and many places, as schools as a whole, valuing. I want to see students be able to empathize with one another, also with the world around them. I want to see empathy used as a tool to help students learn to observe more and to question and to think critically and to expose them to different problems and try to find solutions utilizing things like PBL and more intimate discussion groups and things like that.
Okay, thank you for that. And next is Jonathan.
Hey, hi everybody. So just to give you a bit of my background, I'm actually trained as a molecular biologist, and after quite a while in industry, I ended up deciding that the way I wanted to make a difference in the world was through writing communications, and I ended up writing a book about ethics that takes a very sort of scientific perspective on answering the question, what matters? And my interest has grown into towards looking at ways of reducing suffering in the world, which I think is really the core of what ethics is about. My book, I pasted in a photo of the book there. It's called The Battle for Compassion. It came out a few years ago. And what I'm looking to do is to develop new creative projects to promote this core value of compassion and looking for effective ways of reducing suffering. I give public talks. I put out a short film last year, a 20-minute film based on the book that basically distills out some of the key ideas. Did a workshop a couple of months ago on how to go from compassion to action in Mallorca here, where I'm actually living at the moment. And I've just started a new association based in Switzerland called the Organization for the Prevention of Intense Suffering, and basically we're going to be looking for new creative ways of spreading compassion in society. And one other thing I'd like to mention is I actually had a project to introduce compassion to schools. It was sort of a pilot project, and it came from the realization that if we really want to change things at a global level, we need to change not just the systems, but we need to change the values in society. And one of the most obvious ways of doing that, of course, is to find ways of making the teaching of compassion accessible and finding ways of being able of providing tools to educators around the world. So just to mention, the project itself didn't go through because the pilot school I was going to work with decided they were more interested in staff concerns, and they had other issues that had a higher priority. But I've put together a list of resources, and I've got a sort of project document that describes what I was planning to do, and I'd be happy to share some of those ideas with you, maybe in the course of this call or outside it. So it's a bit of a long introduction, but that's
okay,
that's
great.
it for me.
Then Allison, thank you.
Sure. Well, hello everyone, and Edwin, I just really want a sort of shout out and connection to you. I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing. And I noticed just through Facebook we had some mutual friends, so that's neat to see, including Rosa Zubizareto, who's
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
he and I are connected and have some things in common. So I'm Allison Fornes. I am, I was for many years a classroom teacher, and in New York City. And then something happened. I took a break. I was a fellow on a retreat, and I learned about this process called systemic constellations. So, which I give you the name in case you're familiar with the constellation process. Some people know it, and then I may or may not have to explain more. But most people do not know the process, and so I can talk a little bit about that. But what I discovered for myself, because my interests are in education and social change, that I really needed to relanguage how I talk about the work. Because when I introduced myself as a systemic constellations facilitator, my background is in systems thinking. I taught systems thinking in school. I also taught a lot of mindfulness practices in my classroom. And so I had these two pieces, a kind of non-rational, the spiritual practice, and the ability to be, the practice of being present, and I often entered that practice in the classroom through very experiential ways. But I was also a systems thinker and really interested in modeling. I happen to have, Jonathan, I have a molecular biology background. I taught science. So I actually happen to be a kind of a little bit of a nerd for that kind of thing. I like that kind of work. But it was a hard fit because even amongst educators, teaching systems thinking it's a leap, it's a challenging process. And I discovered a few years ago the systemic constellations process, and it really just changed. It changed everything. The course of my work has completely changed. So I spent several years immersed in the process, both in training and practicing, and now I'm really reorienting back to my places where my heart leads around education and social change. So most of my work right now is organizing. I work with other facilitators in developing a process that brings together the systemic constellation approach. Again, I'll explain that in just a minute. With other emergent group practices, if you're familiar with art of hosting practices. Mm-hmm. So I actually have an event coming up next week, and I sort of help to nationally organize constellations facilitators for doing larger collective healing work. And then I have my education piece, which is really why I'm here. My interests, like many of you, I think, is bringing what I refer to as empathic intelligence. So the way I understand empathy as a result of the constellation work is I've come to see it as a way of knowing. And the constellation process is a very experiential and non-rational process. So if we're looking at systems, for example, and you see I have a little diagram with these little hearts in there, I can ask any person here to represent a part of the system without story. We don't have to explain what the part is. We can even do it blind. I often do blind constellations as a way to introduce the process. So if we're looking at, for example, I'm sorry if you're hearing background noise. I can't find my headphones. So if you're looking at police violence, for example, you can start to identify what are the points in the system that you would like to inquire into, and you can have people stand in for those points in the system, and they will experience in their bodies the way in which that point in the system relates to other points in the system. And so what I have come to understand for myself, and what I'm really working on and really playing with, is the idea that empathy is actually the ability to perceive the flow of information through a point in the system. And so for example, in the work I do, we often will end up representing something abstract. So for example, if a person's working on a block that they're having, you can stand in and represent the block and feel into the block. So it doesn't have to be, it often is connected to humans, to people, but it doesn't have to be. So I'm going to say one more piece and then I'll end here, which is that my intention in education is to teach empathy as a way of knowing. And when you do that, my vision is to to imagine having people in a circle in that classroom community, any learning community, where the group or the individual has a question that they're working on, and then you raise your question, and then the group can actually step into the system. And so the empathy becomes the actual point of entry into a system without needing to do additional, say, research or ahead of time. You can just enter into the point. I often say when I'm teaching this that in the same way that you can think about anything, you can empathize. You can lean into that kind of empathic intelligence and have information. And when you first start, you might even feel like you cannot rely on that information. But the more you develop that muscle, you discover how much information is available just by allowing yourself to enter into the system in that way, enter into that kind of empathic way of knowing. So that's me.
Okay. Oh, great. Yeah, I really like that approach. The whole family constellation work. I think that's really a very empathic process. So excited that you're part of this to share that. Vince.
Hi. So, well, I feel I'm in great company here, really. I'm a psychologist by training, and lately a few years ago, I became a mediator, and then I've been working all my life in schools as a psychologist and as a teacher, and lately I've been working a lot with restorative practices. So I have here this logo of this association to which I belong to. So my intention, like this morning, I was doing a training with educators from a what's that? From a juvenile detention center on restorative practice. Can you hear me? Or
Yeah, we do. There's a little bit of background noise. I don't know if that's from you or.
I don't know. So like this morning, I was doing this training with these educators from this juvenile detention center, and last week I was doing trainings with schools. And whenever I do the training, people, I would say, love it. They find it amazing, very interesting. However, they rarely put it into practice. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but my intention is to find ways to so they can explore their context and they can see how things could be different by really implementing this, I would say, radically different way of perceiving reality and doing interventions. In the past, I thought that maybe appreciative inquiry could be a good approach, maybe World Cafe, I don't know, these kind of approaches, and I just happened to happen into this design thinking workshop, and I thought, okay, I have another session on Tuesday, maybe I'll be able to do something. Maybe I'm too daring, I don't know.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Did I pronounce your name right? Vince? Is it?
Vince, Vincent, whatever.
Vincent, okay.
Yeah, I'll respond to anything.
Okay.
Starting with VI.
Vince, okay. Great, thank you so much for that. Helen, would you like to?
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for allowing me to share this space with you guys. I appreciate it. I'm a graduate student at the University of Arkansas, Clinton School of Public Service. It's in its 11th year now. It's a very, very new graduate program based on service projects. So you have a local service project, then you go abroad, and then you choose your final capstone, and you kind of design it based on what you're wanting to learn. During my coursework, I took ethics of public service, and during that time we had to write a project of an organization that we found that was truly doing public service, and public service is your own definition. So this was according to my own definition, and so I actually wrote a paper on humans of New York, and I loved it so much, and I find it to be public service because it rehumanizes the world, one picture, one story at a time, and it kind of teaches this way of being, because it allows space and opportunity for us to get to know strangers, to get to know people, or to literally see other people's shoes, and maybe just let your imagination go with who this person is and where they come from. So I just really, really loved it. And so when I was designing my final capstone, or trying to choose what I was going to learn about, because I had become obsessed with this thought of rehumanizing the world and what exactly that means, that led me to empathy. I find it to be the heart of this rehumanization. So I saw that there was a new school opening in Fort Smith, Arkansas, so it's about 2.5 hours away from me. And I went to the superintendent or the founder of the school and pitched this idea of, hey, how can we put empathy into this school? How can we create this culture around empathy? And she was like, that sounds awesome. Let's do it. And so for the past couple of months, I've been doing research, trying to figure out how to do this. What does this look like? Been talking to a lot of kids and high school youth, and they want it. So that's exciting to hear that the youth are actually like, yes, let's do this, let's do this. And so I don't know exactly what it looks like. Is it providing the right tools and resources for the faculty and staff? Is it providing freestanding lessons to them? Is it saying, let's have an empathy word a week and go around that and learn about empathy and learn about, what does it mean to be a human being in this world and a human being to more human beings? So that's where I am. I got connected with Edwin just because he commented on a blog that I was reading, and just reached out to him, and we connected, and I was like, this is awesome. Can I please be a part of whatever you are doing, because I need tools, I need resources. I have a new school that wants to do this, so I find this to be the perfect pilot. And it is based on project-based learning. So it's kind of how do we connect this to project-based learning, and yeah, so I'm excited. That's why I'm here. Y'all, I feel like y'all know so much about this, and I feel like you've been studying this and are so passionate about it. So I am open to as much resources. I need this. Like, we have the opportunity to pilot this. I mean, the school's open, so if I can just do my job right and do it well, provide the school with what they need, then we can go from there and see if this is working, see what doesn't work, and spread it and let it catch fire.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, this is exactly what we're doing here. We're designing your program for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So, oh, great. So, well, this is what we're doing here is human-centered design. I'm wondering, does anybody know? Is anyone familiar with human-centered design? Have you heard of it before, or is this sort of new? Up, yes, no, a little bit, up, down. Okay, so, okay, great. So human-centered design comes out of the design community. There's a global design community that designs stuff. They used to make, products. They made computers. They made stuff beautiful. And this process is really growing. It's really kind of getting a lot of traction. And somebody mentioned project-based learning. So it's sort of like project-based learning 2.0. It's a whole tool set for how do you design stuff. It started off making stuff beautiful. Now it's moving into designing products, services, systems, processes, cultures even. So this process is called human-centered design, or actually it's been called empathic design by some people, or design thinking. And there's an organization called IDEO, which actually, let me share this screen again, show a little bit about what's going on with design. Let me see if I can get the right screen up here. Let me present that to everyone. So this is IDEO. So IDEO is a design company. They're really the leader for this process. They are in Silicon Valley, and there's been a lot written about them. The founder, David Kelly, was interviewed on 60 Minutes, where they really showed this process. And this is their website where they do the design process. And like I said, they're in Silicon Valley and big in the Bay Area. And this process of design has been moving into the universities. So David Kelly, the founder of IDEO, they started about 5 years ago. I think it is the D School at Stanford. So there's a whole department for design at Stanford, and this is the website here. And it was funded by the German software company SAP. They got like $130 million to build this design school there at Stanford. And then the founder, they also built this design school, the Hasso-Platter Center in Berlin. So that was the second design school, specifically around this human-centered design. And there's a lot of different organizations, a lot of different groups starting to use this. So for example, there's Design for America. This is like a group, an association. So it's using design for social good. And they are in campuses, probably about 20, 30 campuses, kind of like the elite, Ivy League campuses, schools around the United States. So they do this design thinking, design process, kind of like a club. And this is their website. There's UC Berkeley, where I live near. They also have a design institute there, and I just heard that they've made it a minor. So it's actually, you can get a degree in design as a minor. And then IDEO also created IDEO.org, which is a nonprofit version of IDEO. And you can see here they say human-centered design sits at the intersection of empathy and creativity. So it's really about using empathy as a gateway into creativity. The idea is that anything you design, you got to be able to empathize with people and their needs. And you can see their whole, they go through the whole process here, which we'll show. And in the Bay Area, it's like really popular design. So there's actually a design week. They have like a whole week. They just had it last month. So all these different, startup companies are using it. Google is using human-centered design as kind of like their corporate culture, and a lot of other companies are doing that as well. So here's this San Francisco Design Week, and they had conferences all around the Bay Area, talking about different aspects of design. And this is a map of design thinking in K through 12 schools. So design thinking is becoming, it's really kind of the center point, I'd say, is the Bay Area, where there must be, you see the Bay Area in terms of schools that are using this process. There's probably 20, 30 schools in the Bay Area that either use design thinking as part of their school curriculum, or some schools are actually built from the ground up, like a whole different model of education where they use design as the the process of the whole school. And so that's a little bit about design thinking. And let's see here. So let me turn this off. So with the design workshop, what this workshop is sort of like the minimal design. We go through one iteration, one cycle of the design process. It's kind of like about the minimal what time needed to go through one cycle of the process. IDEO has a workshop they put out there, which I also teach. It's like an 8-hour version of this design process, and they also have a 7-week version of the course. So it's like 5 hours a week, 7 weeks, and I actually teach that too, and go and extend it into 10 weeks. So we actually spend 10 weeks going through this design process. So this is like a little introduction to design, and I hope that we can go into these other workshops too, and it's all on this same design challenge of how might we design empathic cultures in school. And that's something that design is doing. It's starting to design not only product services, but designing cultures, which is what our task is today. So a little bit about this workshop. Like I said, it's like the minimal, design time. Like, so it's going to be pretty rushed, pretty fast. And it can be kind of feeling overwhelmed because we're moving fast. You got to learn, Hangouts. You got to learn Mural. You're learning a whole new process, and a lot of different technical problems come up. Your microphone's not working. You got to reboot. So there's a lot of kind of stuff, and it could be a little stressful, but just kind of go with it. And this is like just a little taste, a little introduction to the whole process. So is there any quick questions before we go to the next step? Okay. Then I want to give a little bit of an overview of the design process. Like, you know, what is how does this process really work, or at least a high level version of it. So this is about human-centered. Whoa, what? That is weird. That's acting really strange here. When I zoom in, it changes the image. Let me just reboot. Reboot that. Okay, yeah, now that's better. That's working. So this is the design process here. So the design process it's five. You can break it down into five steps. Hopefully everyone is seeing that. So the first step is empathize. If you want to design anything, if we want to design a empathic school culture, first we've got to learn what the students, the teachers, the staff, the community's needs are around empathy. And that comes about by, you know, interviewing, and there's a lot of different techniques for empathizing with the needs. And once we've empathized with the needs of people we're designing for or with, we will find a problem area. You know, what is the problem that we're kind of have discovered, and we want to articulate that problem statement. Then we want to go into the ideation phase, which is just a fancy word for brainstorming. So we move into this phase of generating a lot of different ideas. And then once we have all these ideas, we want to hone in on one idea and then build a prototype. So design is really about quick, rapid prototyping, you know, coming up with something tangible that you can work with, taking that prototype and going back to the users we're designing for and testing it. And that's the last phase. And so another view of this process is, if we're in the empathy phase, there's kind of a divergent and convergent quality to design. So when we're empathizing, as you know, you empathize with people, it's very open. You're gaining more and deeper, feeling deeper and deeper into their experience and their needs. So it's a very opening, divergent, getting a lot of different insights. So then you've got all this, you know, how do you work with all that? So you need to start defining, honing in, you know, into one kind of problem area. You can see that's where the divergent comes in. I mean, there's a divergent opening, and then the convergent honing in on a problem area. When you have the problem area, we shift from an empathy mode into a creativity, brainstorming mode. It's like we're kind of moving from empathy to a bit of analysis to brainstorming. And then brainstorming again is a very opening, you know, all kinds of ideas get generated. You know, you got a whole platter of ideas. And then again, we want to hone in and converge to a specific prototype and then test that prototype. And there we go. And another way of looking at it is the process is iterative, meaning we go through the process and then we go through it again and again and again. So what we're going to do in this workshop is we're going to go through one iteration of the process, and but that's only like the beginning. To really do this well, you got to do it over and over and over and over again. And each time you kind of get more and more refined till you get a more and more refined you know, product or service. So that's a little bit. Any questions about that?
Yeah, I've got a question. I mean, if you're dealing with a problem which has already been addressed by others, and you know, there's certainly a lot of programs out there to introduce empathy and compassion into the educational system. Where would you, at what point in this cycle, would you try to introduce existing tools, existing designs? Would
So
you?
that would be in the empathy mode. So when we empathize, we want to design an empathic school culture. We would go out and we would research. We would talk to students. We'll talk to teachers. We'll talk to the staff. And we'll also talk with experts and community members. So at this phase, in the empathy phase, we're reaching out to the wide community and gathering information and insights. So it would be, primarily around that phase. And then once you've, got a new version of something that you want to test, you can go again to the experts and say, well, how does this work for you? Or how does, what do you think about this? We go back into the empathy mode. So.
Okay, because I mean, there may already be prototypes or that have already been tested that may actually do the job for what you're aiming to do.
Yeah, so in the empathy mode, you would go out and gather those insights, and then you would bring those in and bring those into your, brainstorming mode. Say, oh, I've got this idea because I've seen this, and we can kind of add that. So, okay. So let's see. There's a link here. It says next page, so you can click on that, and it should open up the next page where we want to get to. And I'm also going to, I can put that in the chat window. That should open. I want to move from where we are to the next page. I see people starting to pop in there. Okay, see Gray's there, Helen. Okay, so we're going to kind of jump into the process now, and let me share this screen again. So we're going to jump right into the empathy mode here. So empathy, this is the stage we're at, and step one. And what we want to do is, okay, now we have our design challenge. Design process typically starts with this. Oh, let me present to everyone with a design challenge. And our design challenge is how might we design an empathic school culture in our school or any school for that matter. And you can see up along the top here it says sample questions. And one of the best ways to begin, what we're going to do is interview each other about our needs and ideas and so forth around empathy in the school. And we want to come up with some questions. So if everyone can just write a question down here, just grab one of those little boxes. You should be able to click on it. And I'll just take the first one and say, like, what problems do you have with empathy in the schools? So you can just go in there, click on one of those boxes, and write some kind of a question. What question would you want to ask people about their needs for empathy in the school? That could even be a question like that. It's like, what are your needs for empathy in the school?
So does everyone write down their question where you right underneath yours, or am I?
And there's a little gray boxes.
Yeah. So just
so you
like
can
number
just
2.
grab, and there's more on the other side there too. So you can grab any one of those gray boxes and just start typing into it. You can write one question or a couple, is whatever. Okay, so okay, see, somebody still, Allison's still writing. Once you finish that, we'll go through. I'll just read through some of them. We'll read through all of them. So with design, the first step, like I said, is empathy. We want to go out and really hear people's stories, so we want to empathize with them, and asking questions is a good first step. Move some of those out of the way. Okay, well, let me read those questions then. So this is, what are your needs for empathy in the school? What does a successful day of teaching empathy look like? Oh, that's great. What problems do you have with empathy in the school? What kind of tools and exercises have shown to be most effective in promoting sustainable increases in empathic behavior in students? What approaches have you used to engage, activate empathy in students? How can administrators better listen to students to provide them with support and guidance? How can empathy be used to support academic goals? Example, the study of history or literature. Oh yeah. And what fixed ideas do you have which are on the way of you, or are in the way, I think, of you believing that having more empathy can be a good thing for our school? Okay. Is there any other questions that you just want to throw out there that come to you quickly?
Yeah, in one here. You want me to? I'll just write it in,
or just throw it out. Just
well, I think one of the big questions is how to get buy-in from school management to actually introduce empathy and compassion. It's not always considered a priority.
Okay, how to get buy-in. So with the design, we also want to really, what feelings, a good thing to kind of get into for empathizing. For me, the definition of empathy is feeling into, feeling into my own experience and the experience of others. So when we want to really hear, what are your feelings around this issue, right? Like, especially the pain, we want to really find the pain areas, like what are the frustrations, the pain, the loneliness, or the anxiety around that, and what are the underlying needs behind that. So that's also a good kind of area to check into. Okay, so what we want to do next is we're actually going to do interviews with each other. So you can see if you scroll down a little bit farther. Let me share that screen again to show what we're doing and present to everyone. So you can see what I'm just going like what's on the screen here. So Allison, what you'll do is you'll interview Jonathan. We'll have 5 minutes each to do interviews, and then Jonathan will interview Gray, and Gray will interview Helen, and then interview Vince, and then Vince will interview me. And the rest of us who aren't being interviewed, our job is to take notes, jot down the high points of what you're hearing onto a Post-it, and that's just pretty straightforward. Is any questions about that? So just click on a Post-it and So if Jonathan says, "Oh, I'm struggling with," so what was your question? Like buy-in. How do we get buy-in? Like my struggles with buy-in. It could be. I mean, that was what I was hearing there. So we would just type in how to get buy-in. Was just like a one. Are you kind of like wondering how to get buy-in? So the rest of us will take notes, and let me get the timer. I'll keep time and set the time. Yeah.
Edwin, this wasn't quite clear. I mean, do you want this to be based as much as possible? I mean, presumably on our own experience. I mean, there are things here I may not be able to answer based on direct experience, but is this more of an exercise, or do you want it to be really for the content to be as valid as possible?
As valid as possible, really. Speak from your own truth. Like even if you're not in the school, just speak from whatever experiences you've had. I'll put some more of these down. Okay. Do try to make it. Let me put some more post-its in here. Just a second. I'm just going to duplicate these.
Oh, I can't.
I'll do that. Oops. Just 1 second. So I just put some more in, so we have plenty of these already. You can also click just on the page, and it will create a post-it. So if you just click on the page, it automatically generates a post-it, so you can do that too. So okay, you got 5 minutes. Take it away, Allison.
Okay. So Jonathan, let's start with what does a successful day of teaching empathy look like?
I've got to preface this with the fact that I haven't taught empathy in classrooms. I've gone as far as designing a potential workshop. I've done a compassion workshop, but this is not something which I have my own personal experience with students. I can tell you a little bit about what I've learned from reading about other kinds of programs and the kinds of
or even just from your own experience what is a successful day for you when you're working with people who are even reading your books. What's success in that context? I
think success basically means that there's been a change in people's perspective, and this is actually, I think, a big part of empathy, and this is something we practiced some exercises in a workshop I did recently. Perspective taking, putting oneself in another's shoes. This is something which we don't tend to do very, very naturally. We all know that we're supposed to do it, and yet it takes an active it takes an active step, a conscious change in perspective to imagine what somebody else is feeling, and there are different ways, different kinds of exercises one can do. I think it's really interesting, especially to get people to identify with somebody who they may have a problem with. Somebody that we might have a really strong emotional reaction to, somebody who may have hurt us. This is an exercise I've done, for example, where we try to defend somebody that we might have had a problem with, or we might be angry with. We've had some sort of issue with in the past. And we try to explain how they might see things, try to actually defend them almost as we would, as a lawyer might defend their client. I think it's a very powerful change in perspective, because instead of looking at people as objects of blame, we learn to understand that we all do things, we all have thoughts because of various circumstances in our lives, things that have happened to us in the past. we're all a product of past circumstances. I think this is one of the most powerful tools that you can teach people is to see that we're all flawed, we're all human, and we do things often because of negative things that have happened to us. If we can get people, and in particular to get students to look at things like that, then they look at other people not as objects of blame, but as people who are deserving of compassion. So I would think that one of the main goals of any empathy program to promote empathy is to foster this kind of change and perspective. That would be my sort of first stab at answering that question.
Yeah, great. Well, let's see. We have about a minute left, so let's see if I can use one.
I'll try to be quicker on the next one.
Let's see, what is this? Oh, well, the buy-in question I think is actually very interesting. I know you suggested that's a challenge. Maybe you can even speak from the challenge point of view. What?
Yeah.
Get buy-in, or what are the challenges? Yeah.
Well, my own experience has been trying to sell a program to a local school, a local private school, where they were really very, very interested apparently, but then they had other issues. I think the main challenge is that school administrations have their own set of problems. They have to get the students to pass exams. They have to deal with with staff issues, making sure the staff are happy. They have to deal with parents who might question programs that are not, let's say, very traditional. They might wonder what the effects are on the children. My first stab at an answer here would be to try to explain the benefits and point to past experiences in other schools that show that children that have gone through empathy development programs have tended to be better developed, better adjusted. I mean, to society, more compassionate, more successful. I think there's a need for real evidence to show what's in it for school administrators, aside from this idealistic vision for the world.
Great. That was perfect. 5 minutes, too.
Okay, keeping good time. So let's see. We have then going next. We have Jonathan interviews Gray, and the rest of us take notes.
Just going to expand get in here a bit.
So you can ask any questions you want, or use the ones that were there. You just feel free to.
Okay. Okay. Let me start now. So let me ask you this question: what do you see as the main the need for teaching empathy in schools? Where does it, from your perspective, why is there an urgent need for this? Or and what do you see as the benefits? What kind of benefits would you be looking for from such a program?
Well, I think that can be a twofold answer, because I think there is the benefits from the humanistic point of view, the idea that we're creating better humans, we're creating better people to send out into the world. I think the idea that we're, creating kids who get perfect scores on their SATs and then go to Harvard and get a great paying job is, a wonderful thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to go out and do good in the world. And I personally, as a teacher, find that to be not very exciting. I want to create students who are going to go out and want to do good in the world. But the flip side to that is, like you were saying, empathy is a valuable skill. It's a valuable asset. And so I think, looking at it that way, looking at it as a 21st century skill, and the idea that, research skills, and the idea that, math skills and all of that, so much of that now is able to be delegated to computers and delegated to, the internet. Empathy is something that cannot be. Empathy and compassion are completely human, traits. And so if we can create students that are grounded in empathy, create students that are grounded in compassion, then they're going to be bringing something to a job interview. They're going to be bringing something to a company that can't be replaced by technology at this point. So I think that, there is a valuable, component to teaching empathy in schools that is marketable, I guess, is a way to put it. But for me, I just think that students can learn better if they're more empathetic. They can be more open to the world. They're more open to questioning things that they've, just sort of taken for granted. And it genuinely creates better citizens, in my opinion.
Yeah. Do you have a sense of what kind of approaches are most useful in creating this kind of transformation in students?
I do. I mean, from what I've found in my classroom work, I think project-based learning is huge. I think exposure to things that are different than themselves is also huge. Taking students outside of their comfort zone, exposing them to things that they're not used to being around. I mean, and for certain students, that can be as simple as, I did outdoor ed, and I would have students come from inner city Baltimore, who had never seen a deer before. And, we would walk through the woods, and they'd see a deer or a frog, and it would just be like their mind was blown. And that was huge, and that was enough to sort of get them thinking and asking questions and wanting to know more about these animals. And that was a form of empathy, and that was a form of compassion that was starting to grow in them for the world around them. Because to me, empathy isn't just like them feeling more for other people. It's them feeling more for other people and the environment and other living beings. The field study and PBL and all of that, I think, is very important. I think connecting in wilderness and to each other is huge.
Yeah. And maybe I can just follow up on that a bit, because I've grown also to see the issue of the animal suffering as being one of the biggest issues we face today. Just the whole scale of suffering that humans impose on animals, and what kind of ways do you see that we can introduce that to the classroom? And do you think what kind of challenges do you see in trying to promote changes in behavior, changes in attitude towards animals?
I think, and I know a lot of people, it goes back and forth, because I know that it's a big, huge debate right now about like animals in captivity. But animal interaction programs that I've done with children, and taking kids to wildlife rehabs and things like that, and them getting to actually see animals in person, it's been amazing. You see kids really get to interact with animals that they normally only see on TV, and you see this spark, and you see this care like sort of just erupt in their eyes. And I have students who now, like, just last night I was paging through their Facebook, and we learned in marine bio last year about shark finning and shark fin soup, and now they're like posting videos about shark finning on Facebook, which isn't that big of a deal, but for a 16-year-old to post a video on Facebook is a huge deal to them, I guess. But it's great, because you see kids who otherwise really would have no interest whatsoever begin to make this personal connection with an injured hawk that they would have never ever gotten to see up close. And it really like grabs them, pulls them in, and even if it means that all they're doing is helping build an enclosure for it or clean up poop, still a way for them to actually interact one-on-one. And it's also a way for them to learn responsibility and autonomy, and a way for them to actually become part of something. And I find that really helps them invest. And then if that makes them think later down the road, like, what do I need to do to make sure that this species or the habitat of this species is better protected, then I think that's a huge part.
Okay, I think that was it with time. I went over a little bit because I forgot to hit the start button, the timer. So, great. If you interview Helen, then, and we have everyone else can take notes in the next section.
All right, tell me when to go. Can I go?
Okay, now I hit the start button. Okay, 5 minutes.
Okay. So what role do you think that active student voice should play in an empathetic school design?
I think that their voice should be the center. I think that faculty and staff should listen to their audience. I think they can incorporate workshops like this and human-centered design workshops to put students' voice at the center, because that's the audience. Like, that's who we're teaching, and that's who we're wanting to grow and build. because they're the school, you know, they're part of the school. So we can't build a culture in an empathic culture in school if they're not a part of it. So yeah.
So what sort of programs would you maybe try and suggest or design to increase communication between students and, say, administration? I mean, because teachers and students interact fairly regularly, obviously, but administration and students don't always. So how would you increase that?
I would want the administrators to create space and opportunity, whether it's an hour a week. I think that, especially with the school I'm working with, it's based off of big picture learning, and mentors are a huge part of that, as well as the faculty and staff. And there's like an hour out of each day just for the teacher to meet with the student. So when it comes to administrators, I think that they need to be out there in the front. I think they need to be, one, modeling empathy, and two, creating space and opportunity to meet with the students, to know the students, to let the students feel comfortable for them to approach the administrator if they have a question.
What ways have you been successful bringing empathy into the classroom?
I am very new at this when it comes to the classroom. However, I have done a few focus groups with students, and my first focus group, the kids were so energetic and so excited about this. Success to me for that workshop looked like having buy-in, like wanting them to, or wanting this to be a part of the school, and finding it fun. So I did all these like cool activities and games, and they found it to be really, really fun. And not only did they find it fun, they found meaning in it. So I thought that was a huge success. Last night I did a workshop with kids, and they want to partner with me to bring it to their school. So I think that's been my most like cool thing.
So there's been, I think we've talked a lot about in the last 3-ish interviews how we bring empathy to schools and how we extend empathy to students more. How do we work to extend empathy to teachers, both from students and from administrators? You know, there's a lot of talk these days about teacher burnout and teacher stress. So how do we work to extend empathy to teachers and make that, a viable thing as well?
So you're extending it to teachers as opposed, or you're asking about to extend it so they feel it then to teach it. Okay, yeah. So they feel it. I think that's a great flip of the question. I absolutely love that question. How do we? One, I think developing relationships with teachers and staff is huge. I think that the administrators need to make certain that their teachers' voices are heard, and that they know that they're a part of the school and they're building this school together. I think when it comes to students, especially high school youth and kids in general are just so highly intelligent, and they often put out the behavior that they're receiving. So if we can guide teachers to teach empathy and to be more empathetic to their students, then I really think that students will start modeling that behavior and kind of exemplify what it is. So I think allowing the space for teachers to have a voice with administrators is a great first step.
Very good. I feel like I'm close to time. I don't know. Do I have more?
15 seconds.
Ooh.
I don't know. All right. I guess my next question would be, how would we work on designing an empathic discipline system? What do you think? What would that look like to you?
I think we need to first answer the question of why. Why is this important? 2, and we need to keep it alive. So it needs to be something that people want to take part in and be interested in. So is it a toolkit? Is it an online toolkit? Is it a website? Is it something that we can build together or constantly co-design? I think first answering why this is important, why this matters, and presenting that data to the schools is a great first step. And then trying to figure out what they want and what that school will use, and having the foundation enough or strong enough to make it flexible, to make this design or this tools or whatnot flexible per school, I think is a way to get it around the world.
Okay, thank you for that. And then Helen, interview Vince.
Hi.
The rest of us take notes. And start. 5 minutes.
Oh, I'm asking the question. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Would be nice.
Let's reset the clock. I forgot. I was just. I am so sorry. Okay, Vincent.
Yeah.
What approaches have you used to engage or activate empathy in students?
Well, mostly circles of dialogue, like sitting in circles, and well, mostly one approach could be to ask students to sit in a circle, pass an object, and like ask questions which are really relevant to them, so we can share meanings and we can solve conflict when it appears. Also, just active listening. I think people notice, and students particularly notice so much when they are listened to, because they are so used to be told, not be listened to.
In your introduction, you said that you've been doing trainings in schools and juvenile detention centers, and you found that you have buy-in, but you rarely have action. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. My impression. I mean, I worked as a teacher also for many years, and when you are in a school or in a detention center or in this kind of place, like things go like rushing in front of you. So if you have not really carefully planned when you are going to intervene and how you are going to intervene, it's just not possible because you keep doing other things which seem more urgent. So I always feel enthusiasm when I finish a training. People like swear they are going to apply it. They say we're going to do this and that, but then some do, and if you ask like after some time, a year or so, they say, I really started doing that. It worked so well, but then other things came up, so I didn't follow up. I
So,
hear a lot things like that.
so taking from your experience of having this buy-in and not having action, what have you learned that we can incorporate when it comes to creating an empathic culture in school?
Okay.
What do you recommend?
Yeah, my mind is now focusing on the trainings, and I mean I see different things. On one hand, I see that I need to invest even more time with planning the implementation. That's one thing. But then I also listen to the other participants today. I also it reminds me of the importance of also talking with other stakeholders, students, parents, I don't know, other teachers. For example, teachers, well, teachers and educators in detention centers always complain that the administrators don't listen to them. So, and they say if we don't listen to each other, how can we listen to the students? I don't know if that makes sense. The, the thing is that uh, I think I need to invest more time with implementation, with really planning, uh, like thinking about the context, and so participants in the training spend time thinking about really how we all together are going to implement this, and also probably to disseminate or to train also, uh, or to ask students, parents, and so forth. So we have like many people, many more people like pushing or well, doing things which are going to help for this to be really implemented. I don't know if that's clear enough.
Yeah, no, I hear you saying that you need buy-in, and then you need to have this stronger foundation um, through
Okay.
careful planning and follow-up.
Yeah.
Is that correct? One of your questions that I think maybe you wrote is, what fixed ideas do you have which are in the way of believing that having more empathy can be a good thing for our school?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I I think at this point I do not have these fixed ideas. I believe it would be useful. However, I feel that, for example, this morning when I was in this training, some people, I mean, I kept listening from some participants in the training, things like, this sounds excellent, but it depends on the person. Like saying, with some people, I can do everything you say, with others, I need a stick. So that's the fixed ideas thing. For example, I perceive that a lot, like with anything, even with mediation. Many people say, that sounds so wonderful, but not with our people. Like even I belong to the well, whatever. That's a too long story. But yeah, no, I do feel it would work. I
Mm-hmm.
don't have these fixed ideas. My fixed idea is that it would work very well.
So when it
Okay,
comes,
that was the time. That was just our 5 minutes. So then, Vince, if you interview me, and we
Yes.
can start the process. Everyone else take notes.
Okay, Edwin, a pleasure to meet you. Uh, so I'd like you to think about a situation, school or in other community, where you have really felt like acknowledged, like being felt by other people. I mean, I wonder if you could think about this situation.
Yeah, it's kind of like, where did I really feel
Yeah,
seen by other people?
yeah, yeah.
And boy, that seems to be a difficult question. Like, where have I really deeply felt seen? Um, Boy, that is like a really peak experience. It's kind of like all the experiences of not having felt seen come to mind, and even within the design community. So I did a workshop at the design school at Stanford, and it was for educators. It was a group for educators doing design. They were learning design thinking, and I found it like very stressful. I didn't even feel really seen in that environment, and I talked to other teachers, and it was the same for them too. Like, they felt kind of like stressed because there's all this new information coming at you, and you feel kind of anxious and nervous about it, and it creates stress in you. So I think that something in that environment, what would have been really helpful is if they would have had little empathy circles, like periodically during the day. Like, you go like 2 hours, and then you get together for like 15 minutes where everyone can do that active listening that you were talking about. Everyone can share like what they're feeling in the moment, and then maybe do even reflection, and then go around. And that, I find, really makes me feel heard. So in terms of feeling heard in general, like, I do these empathy circles, like 4 or 5 people, and I would say that is an environment where I really feel heard and seen. Uh, versus like in a whole classroom or something. Generally I don't feel, I get very anxious in the big group like that. But in a structured, active listening, empathy circle group, I actually do feel quite heard and seen.
Uh-huh. So I kind of perceive the need for these pockets of listening, pockets or I don't know, spaces for listening. And also you mentioned something about time. I mean, you didn't say time, but I felt that time was important when you said about this meeting with teachers and like the stress, everything. I mean, does time have also a part on this? I'm wondering.
Yeah, it's like, it's stressful. Like, they even try to stress you. Like, they create these activities, and they give you a time thing. And their theory is that the more stressed you are, it'll release ideas, because you won't like suppress the idea. So you'll get you'll be so hurried that you'll just start throwing ideas out. But I'm not so sure about that, because sometimes all that stress actually shuts down the idea. And so what we want to do is really create more relaxation through empathy, which brings up the idea that once there was it was a new grad a student at UC Berkeley, and he and I were working together, and I was doing a one-on-one empathy buddy call with him. I mean, talk at a cafe. So I was just empathizing with him and listening, reflecting. He would share, I would reflect back, and then he would share some more. And at the end of it, he said, "I've never felt so creative in all my life. I never felt so deeply heard." Right? Because I was doing that active listening. He was going deeper into himself. And then I would reflect that, and he would go deeper into himself. And he just, like, felt really, just loved that feeling. So I think something like that, somehow to incorporate that active listening to address stress. Because the time pressure creates stress, and when we get stress, our empathy level definitely, I feel it goes down.
Okay. So one thing I see is that you would like put into the schedule, like really set aside sometimes for empathy. And
yeah.
And what other like interventions or things would you do? To really like be eager to go to that place, say school or whatever, so you would feel heard and felt by other people. Besides
Yeah.
this,
It would like what would be to be accepting. Like a friend of mine, he goes to these workshops where when you're a new person in the workshop, two people are kind of like angels for you, and they kind of follow you around and they support you, like ongoing support. So it's almost like two empathy buddies who are just there to guide you through the whole workshop process and constantly be there. And I haven't done it, but I've seen video afterwards, and people are all soft and relaxed, and like the oxytocin, is just flowing. You can just see that they feel so good. So how do we create that deep, that deep sense of relaxation, calmness, acceptance, and belonging? So maybe where you've got like a private empathy buddies who are there, to introduce you to the group or something. So anyway, so that was great. That was 5 minutes. So we'll move on to, I'll interview Allison. You're up next.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Vince. That really was enjoyable. Everyone else can take notes. And okay, Allison, you'd been a school teacher. Like, what was your experience of empathy when you were teaching school?
Well, the places where I got the greatest empathy, I taught, many things, but I would specifically teach. We called it a kind of advisory course. I was calling it intergroup dialogue, and so I was training. From the students' point of view, they were being trained to be facilitators, but we engaged in a lot of, sort of classic group process work, a lot of active listening, a lot of learning to understand the other, and of course, and the end of that particular program, they would facilitate a parent-student dialogue. And it was so powerful for them because I think somebody else mentioned this, Vince maybe, it was the first time they felt the adults were listening to them, the first time they felt heard.
Wow.
And it also allowed them to be, to be seen as a leader, where the parents could see their young people in a very mature role, really in that empathic listening state. So it was very intentional to teach that kind of empathy. But also even in science, because my interest was in designing experiential activities that would engage a person with what they were exploring, I think it was Gray said something similar, that kind of the opportunity to be engaged and to think about something other than them really helped activate empathy, even if it was the evolution of plants, for example, to think about or we did in the math class we would do these population studies, and again, really activating empathy to understand why, you know, the shape of a population in one country looks in one way and it looks differently in another country. So all of those kinds of things really, if you're thoughtful about it as an educator, you can find lots of ways to integrate that kind of empathic understanding or insight.
Okay. So it sounds like you're in your teaching, you're already including a lot of empathy ways of engaging empathy. One was like active listening, so that the students were learning this process, and then the students would actually bring in this process with with their parents, and they felt really good about creating this connection. They were really heard, even with their parents. And then you're looking at how you bring it into all the different courses. Like, how do you bring empathy into population studies or everything else? Is that kind of the...
Yeah, it's interesting saying it out loud. You know, it certainly, that I didn't realize, in fact, until I'm saying it out loud, how much empathy was a part of what I do. It's certainly my orientation has shifted now that I've been doing a different kind of work. But at that time, absolutely, I was doing that.
So you've shifted, really started focusing on this constellation type work, which is more the systemic and relational. Like, something I've looked at is empathy is kind of like an individualistic empathy. Often empathy is seen as, like, you know, the teacher has to empathize with the students, or the therapist empathizes with the client. So it's sort of this individualistic empathy. And it seems like you're moving into maybe what I would call a relational empathy, where you're seeing sort of empathy within the whole. Do you have any experience or thought about that, individualistic to the relational empathy?
Absolutely. I think for me, the first revelation when I started doing this work is that it's non-local. Empathy doesn't exist in the way in the way you spoke about it, between being two individuals, that I can sort of sit with a person and put myself with them in their shoes, for example. But I'll give you a quick story of my first experience. I was chosen to represent with a man who was having difficulty with a mentor that he works with. And I was standing in this, just chosen, my first workshop. I'd never done this before, and I was chosen to represent him, actually. I was surprised. And another person was chosen to represent the mentor. And I felt, for whatever reason, I felt like I wanted to lay down, and that has a particular meaning in constellations. But so the facilitator told me to follow the movement, and I felt very cold. It was a very interesting, like, shaking, an unusual experience for me. Very, very, very strong feeling, though. And the facilitator said, "Well, who is that?" And the person said, "I think that's my sister, who she died when I was very young, and my family, in their grief, they just up and left. They left our whole life behind, and we moved to a new town, and we never spoke of her again, or rarely spoke of her." And at the end, I won't go at all through the whole thing, but just to share with you my felt sense. At the very end, after we had created there had been a shift in the system, I stood up and I looked at the man originally representing the mentor, but now it was clear he was representing the father. And I felt such an outpouring of love. Like, I was shocked by this stranger looking at him and feeling so much love with this person. We embraced at the end. And I think for me, it was the first recognition that I could just walk into this workshop with these complete strangers, know nothing about this story, and be placed into a system and feel so profoundly this experience that wasn't personal to me in the way that I was used to thinking about it. And so, of course, it started to shift a lot of the ways. It's really starting to shift a lot of the way I've understood the world. But in my work right now, I really spend a lot of time capitalizing on that experience and introducing people to it, because I feel like we're just at the edge. We're just at the beginning of learning how to understand and take advantage of this way of knowing. And perhaps our ancestors were familiar with it, but here in our contemporary society, we're very young in this way of knowing.
It's really that way of knowing of the whole system and being able to step into any part of the system and be able to relate with anyone else within from that vantage point and feel the experience and really connect deeply with others even.
Yes, yes.
Oh well.
Yeah, and
well, that was,
that's 5 minutes. That's good.
Okay, great. So okay. Let me just bring this up. Great. So we had a chance to empathize and hear each other's, interview each other and hear each other's stories. And so what we want to do is, did everybody finish? You started, Allison, right? So, okay. So what I'm going to do is if we go through and just clean up all the blank Post-its, just let's delete all the blank Post-its because we're going to go into the next stage here. And you can always, there's an undo feature if you delete something that you want to didn't want to undo. So I'm going to just go through, clean that up. Okay. So there's still some Post-its. Let's go through all the different ones that are blank. You can just click on it and then hit the delete button. Okay. So the next step, so we've got this, let me share the screen so everyone can see it. And here it is. Present to everyone. So this is our screen. We have all these different, from the interviews that we did. So what we want to do now is we're going to we want to start sorting, categorizing these because we're in the empathy mode and we're starting to move into the define mode. So let me bring that up. So we have gathered all these and we're slowly going to start creating themes. So here we go. You can see here we're going into define. We want to create a theme. So what we can do is just start taking these different Post-its and let's start organizing different themes like and then we will label a theme. What we do is, for example, let me bring up what is one. Oh, oops, just a second here. I'm actually going to remove the names because we don't need those anymore. Oh, actually, I'm going to save this. I'm going to actually make a backup copy of this so that we have this for a record. It's going to take a second to duplicate the mural. So we'll have this so we can go back to for kind of our record keeping. So okay, that was done. So let's take the names over here. We're going to delete those names. Well, it's kind of acting up. Oh yeah, if you just right, exactly, just delete the names. And so what's the topic? How do you get buy-in? Okay, so we'll take that. We have that one was the question. And then we can put that, into an area here. So this is like the buy-in theme. And then just start categorizing. Grab a Post-it, pull it into put it somewhere, and then put other topics that are similar. So everything about buy-in would be down here, or it could be like problems or whatever heading you'd like to create. So this is like the buy-in question. And then another topic could be, what are some other topics that you can think of? What were some themes that you found that that came up for you? Uh, Allison, what theme did you have that you heard? Oh, you're
Well,
muted.
yeah. I'm seeing active listening around a lot. So I don't know. I guess the theme would be perhaps something about the techniques, ways of engaging, activating empathy.
Okay, so I just putting in here, said active listening, but it sounds like, let me type in, I'm just getting a little slow, but, okay, so it was, what was it, techniques, empathy, techniques. So all the techniques we can, post-its for techniques we can put down around here. Gray, what was a theme that you heard?
I think relationships. We talked a lot about relationships. So the way that we can have different relationships within schools, or I mean, even when you were talking about your experiences at conferences, so relationships and how that affects, the way different organizations work. Words are not coming to me today. I'm sorry.
Great. So that was, you can see here, I just wrote down relationships. So anything that any post-it, any related to relationship, you can put it under this one. Jonathan, what was there a theme that you heard?
The need for planning. Well, that was actually a theme, but I mean, how to implementation, let's say.
Okay. So I'm just creating. You can also duplicate these just by right-clicking and duplicate. So let me write that in there. So it was implementation. And then I'll move that over a little bit. So everything around implementation is there. Helen, did you have one? A theme that came up for you?
I think the why is a good theme.
Okay, we have whys. And so just put that over there at the end. Vince, what was the theme that came up for you?
Listening to voices, like student voices or to teachers, like taking them into account or bringing them on board. So listening to students and teachers, I would say.
So listening to voices. What is that? Does that work? Listening to voices? Is there a?
I don't know. It sounds like a psychiatrical problem at this point.
Well, you can always change it.
Oh
so
yeah,
sorry.
sorry.
Down there. So here it is. So there's the whole field, and you can add more headings too. Okay, let me duplicate a couple of these just so we have some blank ones around. So that's the gray ones. We're just using the gray as headings. I'll put some more blank ones there.
So is empathy technique, or I might need a little help on this one. How is empathy technique and implementation different?
When I said the word implementation, I meant more how to introduce the actual programs. I think of technique as being what you actually do in the classroom,
Gotcha.
and an implementation how to actually get the staff to apply it, to introduce it. It's more like 2 different levels.
Right, thank you.
Okay, so we'll just keep, and so you can create more headings. If there's like, you keep looking and you see a new heading, just grab one of these empty boxes and write in the one that you would like to add. So we'll just keep going until the whole field is sorted. And if you make a new heading, you could always announce it too. Because I'm thinking of a heading of like just miscellaneous, kind of
Is anyone else's computer lagging terribly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I mean, not good, but
It's not just you. Sometimes if you reload it, it helps.
yeah.
okay. And then are y'all copying and pasting better than dragging, or have y'all found something that works?
I've duplicated some just because I wasn't sure if like maybe they would fit in multiple columns.
Oh, yeah.
So are you like Command C, or is there a better, or I guess right click?
I've just been right clicking and hitting duplicate, but I think you can just Control C or however. If it's a Mac, I'm sure it's different.
Okay, cool.
Our definitions. Yeah, like that.
So when it comes to teaching empathy, I feel like this is something that we discuss, you know, like what are we actually teaching? And I feel like active listening is one. Would y'all consider that an empathy technique, or is this totally different of this is the what?
That sounds, for me, I've just put it down as a technique.
Okay.
But, you know, everybody's going to have their own. So this is also a good time if you want to take a break, I think. If you want to take like a 5-minute break or so, we can just keep working on this if you need to use the restroom or something. So then we can also, for example, like in empathy technique, sort of there's quite a lot there, maybe even sub-organize that. Like I see a lot with empathy circles, listening. There's some sub-categorizing that can happen there. So a whole group around animals, active listening, modeling, installation work. Okay, so kind of got that set up. Any thoughts about that? Kind of what were your ideas? Like, what was the experience like of sorting that out? Any questions?
Well, I have to say, I'm really grateful for going through this experience because I've actually wondered how to do this kind of work at a distance, virtually. So this has been a revelation for me. So thank you for showing us this process.
Okay, great. So you're wondering, like, how do you work together within an online environment, and now you're seeing how you can brainstorm and kind of cluster those ideas.
Right. Especially the post-it, the moving around. Like I know how to do that in a group, but I've never had the experience of doing it in this way. So thank you.
Gray, any insights?
Yeah, no, I was yesterday or Wednesday. I was watching the little video, the tutorial for Mural, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. It's like as close to like being where Helen is with all of those boards behind her online as possible. I mean, I'm still the person who hand writes everything, so I'd still really like that we were all with all of those whiteboards behind us, but it works out well.
Okay. Jonathan, any?
Yeah, it's the first time. It's the first time I've used this tool. I think it's great. The only thing, it's just a bit frustrating that there's quite a bit of lag. At least that was my experience on my computer. I don't know if I should be shutting down lots of other applications. Maybe it would go faster.
Okay.
Or shutting down other windows.
Technical problems with lag kind of slows things down.
Yeah, especially the zooming in and out is really slow. So I can imagine it would be even more effective if I could solve that issue.
I have two 24-inch screens, so it really helps to have a powerful computer and a lot of space. So it's a bit of a struggle, for a laptop or a small screen. Helen, any insights?
No, I think this is really cool. One of my questions for my interviews is, how do we teach empathy, or how can we teach empathy? And a person responded, how do we teach empathy in this digital world? So I think that, brainstorming about teaching empathy or building a culture on it using technologies is really cool.
Okay, thanks. Vince?
Well, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So about these interviews, would you do this one-on-one and just one person? I mean, like simultaneous interviews generally? I mean, no, just sorry. I'm thinking not about this digital thing, but if you had like ways to put us apart in different like rooms, would you do that?
If
Or
we were doing it in person, we would ideally break up in teams of two, and
okay,
then you go one person interview and the other person takes notes.
okay,
So in the 8-hour workshop, we do that over 2 days. We come to the point of doing the interviews, and then people go and do the interviews and come back and then share. So you can record the interviews, or do them ideally in teams of two, so that one person can document, and then the other can do the interview. Is that kind of
okay.
what you're
So these are
thinking?
trios then. Three people, one interviewee and two people doing. Okay.
Exactly. So we could do, if we did a larger workshop, we could actually break up and then go to the school itself and start interviewing people, and then go interview the students, the staff, and then you
Okay.
do it in a team of two. You could even have the students, break
All
up
right.
in teams of two and interview each other.
Okay.
Um,
And do you sometimes have just one more question?
sure,
Do you
great.
sometimes have like if it was in a training slash implementation thing, like a training that you do? Well, whatever. No, sorry, so I got confused. No, my question is, would you do like would you do one interview or several interviews to the same person done by different interviewers, or would you just do like this and this and this
Yeah, generally you do one interview,
on?
and in our association group yesterday, we actually had 3 people interview Gray. So each interviewed her for 5 minutes. So you can kind of be flexible, but generally it's one
Okay.
deep interview, because usually you want to go for an interview for like half an hour. So we're just
Okay.
basically kind of tasting it here for 5 minutes. So great. Well,
Thank you.
thanks for those comments, questions. So the next stage is we've created this constellation. We've seen we have a kind of a buy-in question about listening to voices. How do we listen to voices? What are techniques? We have the question about relationships, the definitions of empathy, like implementation, the why. That's really important. Like, why are we doing this? Why is it important? What interrupts empathy? So the next stage is we want to generate what they call a how might we statement. So we've got these kind of insights. We're seeing, oh, people are interested in techniques, are interested in how do we get buy-in. So we want to generate from this insight a how might we statement. So the question, for example, was buy-in. How do we get buy-in from people? So let me share this on the screen real quick. And present. So we have down here, we have some questions like how might we, pre-done, set up, and then we go into the question of buy-in. Like, so I think the question would be is how might we what would be a question around this? How might we create buy-in from stakeholders or something like that? Like,
Yeah, greater secure buy-in.
Yeah, establish.
how might we establish greater buy-in from stakeholders?
You got sake. Right now, you've got sake holders.
Oh,
That'll be Japanese stakeholders.
It's terrible being around educators with my spelling. So.
The lack of auto.
Okay, how might we establish greater? So we want greater buy-in from stakeholders uh, for fostering for school empathic culture, something like that. What do you think? Kind of like. What we're trying to say is we have this theme of buy-in, and we want to turn that into kind of an action statement. By the how might we, that's very common in that you find your insight. We have the insight that there's a need for buy-in, so we want to translate that insight into an action statement, which is how might we establish greater buy-in from stakeholders for building empathic school cultures.
Yeah. It's actually almost for transforming a school culture if it's really done properly. I don't know if that's too strong a word here, but you know, if it's really done in an integral way, it means actually changing the culture of the school, so that it's not just one module, but how the school actually works.
I really like that, transforming. That really, we're trying to change the whole dynamic. We're trying to change and transform a whole school culture, and we want buy-in. Any other thoughts about that, quick, before we move on to the next one?
No, I think transforming is a good word, because so many schools are already established and old, I guess, and it's set in their ways. So I think.
Okay, great.
I have a question here.
Yeah.
So we didn't mention parents, I think, and so I'm wondering, do you in this section of the work, do you add things that may be left out or that maybe should be added? Just asking.
You could if you wanted to. You know, it's not totally rigid. You could say, "Oh, I just had this other." We're kind of past the empathy phase, but you could say, "Oh, parents." You know, maybe add parents as stakeholders or something like that. So you could say buy-in. You could maybe just create another post-it and say parents.
Yeah, I mean, I'm asking about the process, not so much about this time. So, are you open for people when they see that to say, do you want to add anything, or do you want to change or to tweak something?
Yeah, we don't want to get in too much, because one thing I found is we start making too many changes, it turns into a big dialogue, and we kind of lose the. So, I mean, if we're all experienced designers and have done this in a larger group, we could maybe say, oh, we really need something else. There's something missing here. So it's not so rigid, but just for what we're doing here, we'll just kind of keep on course. But definitely, we want to capture any new insight and creativity. So whatever we can do for that would be great. So maybe we'll just go around. Allison, which of these themes here, which one kind of really speaks to you, and what's kind of the problem that theme is addressing?
Let me take a look here.
Or everyone else can also take a look. We'll just go around and just quickly.
Well, let's see what interrupts empathy. So and the question is, how might we? Okay. So, can you just, so how might we, I don't know. So how might we learn what interrupts empathy? But that's not the right question. How might we
address interruptions to empathy or something? How might we? Yeah. Anyone else?
How might we sustain empathy?
Yes.
Well, it's another way of formulating it.
Yeah. I would say even.
Or protect it.
Yep.
Repair. How might we repair interruptions to empathy?
Okay. How might we repair the interruptions? Yeah. So we can come up with several, different. Everyone can kind of create a few, if you like, like how might we sustain empathy? How might we repair interruptions to empathy? Or if we're going deep into the process, people could add kind of more. So, Gray, do you have one that kind of speaks to you that of all these issues? Which
I think for listening to voices, maybe something like how might we, I'm going to steal the establish, but how might we establish more effective communication in schools to better serve students and their futures?
how might we establish more
Effective communication
communication
in
schools to
or in order to better serve students.
Okay. It's much more effective, and everybody can go by and improve my spelling. Okay. Jonathan, was there one that spoke to you of all these issues that kind of you have like energy for?
Did you say me or Vincent? I didn't understand.
Jonathan?
Yeah. I would go for the empathy, for the techniques, and I guess I'd frame the question: how might we collect and create the most effective tools possible for promoting empathy in the classroom?
Could we say creating a school empathic culture?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, maybe I would change it. And how might we? Yeah, I think that would still work. That kind of formulating it like that.
Okay, how might we collect and create the most effective tools possible for maybe building? I don't know if that works. Does that work? So
yeah, or we can
you
go
always
back.
have multiple. Everybody can create a, one that works for them, and then we're going to vote on it later.
Yeah.
So
we can go back to the word I would use this word transforming again. If the word transforming works, I would use it there as well. Maybe.
Okay. For transforming a school. Okay, nice. Yeah.
Just have a connection with the previous.
Do you want to go in and edit that? Then
yeah, I'll do that. Sure.
Helen, do you have one that works for you? I mean, what's of all these themes? Which one is kind of you have energy for, and a real question around the problem around that?
The ones that are left that we haven't done a how might we?
Mm-hmm.
How might we? I want to talk about. Let's do the implementation. So how might we implement empathy practices and teachings into school culture? How might we create implementation paths? How might we create paths? How might we create opportunities to implement empathy techniques?
Okay, whichever one you feel more excited about, feel free to write that in. And Vince, do you have one?
Excuse me, can I suggest, I don't know, if the word sustainable or sustainability could be in implementation in some way, or it's not my choice?
Oh, yeah. Or you can always write another one, too. You can always take one.
Okay.
You just take one of these blank ones, write in like
Good.
That could be yours too, unless you have another one. It's like, because that was what I remember. What really was for you is like, how do you maintain this, right? That was something that's really burning for you. Is like, how do you maintain like a cultural shift and maintain people's engagement instead of they revert to the old.
Okay. So is it my turn now?
Yeah. So.
Okay. I'm struggling a bit. I mean, I was going first for implementation, but as it's taken, I would go for why, and
Okay.
I'm wondering how to phrase it, because my idea about why is what. It's more like what would you see once this is in place. It's more like what kind of environment would you live in, but that, and how might.
Would that be like how might we articulate a vision for an
Yeah, yeah,
empathic?
yeah. It's this. It's yeah, it's this vision thing. It's yeah. It's like this dreaming thing that I would like to live in.
So
Yeah,
what I
thank you.
put is how might we articulate a vision for an empathic school culture?
Yeah,
Does that kind of capture it?
yes. Probably before the word vision, I would like in I would like something like a shared vision.
Oh,
Well,
okay. Uh-huh. So how might we articulate a shared vision for an empathic school culture?
yeah, thank you.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we have all these how might we statements. What I'm going to do is put these all up above here, just one, and Helen, you have your cursor on one of them. If you could, like, you could either move it or if you take it off. There we go. Okay. So here we have our how might we questions. So, oh, there's another one over there. So we have how might we establish greater buy-in from stakeholders for transforming a school empathic culture? How might we collect and create the most effective tools possible for transforming an empathic school culture? How might we establish more effective communication in schools in order to better serve students? How might we articulate a shared vision for an empathic school culture? How might we repair the interruptions to empathy? How might we create opportunities to implement sustainable empathy teachings, practices, and actions into school culture? How might we address challenges to an empathic culture? How might we sustain empathy? How might we cultivate relationships that promote sustainable culture? Okay, so what we want to do is this is going to be we want to select one of these challenges, and what we can do is actually vote which one we want to work on. So I'm going to set up a voting session here, and we're going to have, everyone has 3 votes. So, and the way the vote works is you'll click on the post-it that you want to vote for. You can, if you just change your mind, you can do shift click to subtract the vote, and that your vote is secret except for mine because I'm sharing the screen. So,
Too bad.
so,
Sorry for you. Sorry.
so just to demonstrate, I really like that one. So you can see a little icon appears on there. So go ahead and take 3 votes for the top 3 that you really like, and we'll see which one gets the most. Okay, everybody voted? When you've Okay, anybody not voted? Okay, so let's see if we can voting session and voting session votes. What do we have here? We have how might we collect and create the most effective tools, and we have how might we establish greater buy-in. Okay. So let's stop Oops, that's where it is. I want to close that. How might we establish greater buy-in? And collect, that one had 5 and 5. We'll move those over. Anybody want to make a pitch for either of those? Because we gotta decide on which one of these to vote for. So go with.
I'll make a quick pitch. I think they're both interesting questions. I think I actually think the buy-in question is potentially more of a challenge. I'm not sure that there is as much material. I mean, you can always find. I think for the first question, you can always get pretty close. You may not have the ideal answers, but you can collect a set of tools that may work. I suspect that getting buy-in can be one of the biggest obstacles. It's a kind of a gut feeling. So I would kind of my vote would be more for the buy-in. But
okay, I like the tools. I've been thinking of a toolkit, so that's kind of got me excited. Anyone else?
I'm pro tools just because I feel like it's hard to get buy-in unless you have the right pitch. And in order to cultivate this culture in schools, I feel like we need to provide them with the foundation, and I think tools are a large part of the foundation.
Okay, we want to make this, thank you, democratic. So they're up there now, so you can vote. We have a new voting. You get to choose one, and we'll see where. Just click on it. Which one you're for. I'm never sure if people have voted. It needs some kind of a.
Like to let you know when it's given enough time.
Yeah, it doesn't show. I don't know when everybody has voted. It should. So it's everybody voted. Anybody need time? Okay. And end voting session. Okay, looks like tools, possible transforming. Okay, we had 4 votes and 2. So I guess we have the how might we collect and create the most effective tools is the one that we want to go for. And I'm going to grab that, and we want to go to the next page now. So if you check down at the lower right-hand corner, it'll take you to page 3. Okay, so what we're going to do is let me share this screen. Present to everyone. So we are now at the brainstorming phase, and unfortunately let me refresh that page. It's really kind of weird, all the images are getting that scribbly thing on them. So, but when I refresh it, it clears it up. So here we are. We went through the empathy. Let me really zoom in. We went through the empathy phase, interviewed each other. We went through the kind of defining a problem area, and then now we're here. We have our how might we statement, and now we want to go into the brainstorming. So, or it's called ideation. And what we're going to do here is, grab one of these one of these sections, and we have our question: how might we collect and create the most effective tools possible for transforming a school's culture? And just fill in. We're going to take about 5 minutes on our own to just fill in ideas, and this is a good time to take a break. I'm going to go to the restroom. And then we'll come back and share those, and then we'll kind of add more ideas to that as well. So take it away. Just whatever ideas come to you, just put them into the Post-its.
And can these be questions as well? Or not?
I'm just going off to the restroom. Did anyone have a question for?
Yes. Can these ideas be questions as well, or just like these tools are?
Just whatever comes to mind. Go ahead and throw it in there. The questions ideally would be like solutions, but if you have questions, what the heck? Okay, so what we want to do is now we'll go through and we can share them. We'll go through and we'll share the ideas. But when you share an idea, share it and then give some time for everyone else to riff off of it. So just in terms of brainstorming, as you know, you probably know the brainstorming rules. You throw out an idea, you don't want to judge it, you don't want to put it down. You want to just be open and actually play off of it and riff off of it. So if somebody has an idea, what comes to you to mind in terms of how you can build on the idea, sort of a yes and mentality. So let's see, who was the first one? The kind of the
Yeah, I took the yellow.
Okay, the yellow.
Okay. Well, there are two levels. One is the idea of collecting, and then I went into some of the specific details of tools. So, so to start with, I have collate existing resources. I mean, just see what's out there on the web and look for existing programs and toolkits that exist. And I actually copied in a link to one of the pages on my website where I created a list of resources that may be useful. So you can click on that, and there's actually a link to probably about somewhere between 20 and 30 different resources that are specific for teaching compassion and empathy. And then some of the specifics that I put down here are, well, as we talked about, perspective taking. Exposure to animals as individuals and not just objects, ethics, and then there are these specific programs of teaching having students meditate, which is an important part of self-compassion, and that's had very positive results. And then for the teachers themselves, we're talking about how teachers can model to the students, and teachers that have learned to be compassionate with themselves become good role models for how students can be more self-compassionate.
I was hearing categories then that we can have like resources and start breaking them down into different categories.
Yeah.
Okay. And any ideas popping into people's heads as they hear this? We want to kind of add to, we want to say yes and.
Yeah, this is Allison. It reminded me that a person, our as educators, as teachers, as administrators, personal practice is really at the heart of. I think it connects with Jonathan's self-compassion and meditation. That your personal practice, for me as a constellations facilitator, it means doing my own work. That is really the sort of foundational piece. And the other thing I'll add is that the other thing I see is that I see this in particular in my work, that whether you enter it through the system and then find where it intersects with the individual, or start with the individual and then from there you can see how just in your own work, in your own practice, it filters out into the system. So I think either way can be an entry point, but recognizing the need for personal practice.
On top of the personal practice, I'm imagining empathy circles for sharing personal practice. So we do empathic listening in a group, and we share what our personal practice is and how it's going. So kind of the shared practice. Okay, if there's no other riff off that, if you want to just continue, was that all of the ideas, or were there more? That you said something about ethics, or
I threw in ethics because I think it's an important part of teaching compassion, is having sort of a sense of what the fundamental priorities should be for our society. So it's, that has to be age appropriate, taught in an age appropriate way. But I think it goes hand in hand with empathy as part of a larger program to promote compassion and action in the world.
So how to teach age-appropriate ethics?
Yes, and going from empathy to actually how to make a difference, how to actually have an impact in the world.
I'm going to add to that age-appropriate perspective taking. I think that's one of my as I started working more with young people, recognizing the developmental differences in terms of making sense of perspective taking. Being as we develop our best practices, we have to be cognizant of those developmental differences.
Okay, we could move to the next one then. Who is the purple?
That would be me. So I had like a whole mess of stuff. So I just said in general, increased communication, and I guess that could be between students and teachers, but also I think between teachers and administration. So if you are a school that's working towards goals to try and, so some of my other ones reflect back to that. So the idea of setting aside time for informal discussion and training, something like that. But I also think bringing in training from area experts, so things like mindfulness, wilderness experts, stuff like that. So bringing in people who are experts in their fields to speak to, the people in your organization. In this case, it's a school, but if you're talking about, if you're working for a nonprofit or you're working for a business and you want to incorporate that sort of thing. And then I have getting out of the classroom and out of the boardroom, because experiencing new things together can help create bonds and get creativity flowing. So one of the great things about environmental education is it becomes this very even playing field for teachers and students, where the teacher is facilitating a situation. We're taking students out into the field, but whatever happens is out of a teacher's control. So it's something where students and teachers are sort of facing this new environment and new experience together, and that's very bonding, and it's very leveling the playing field, and it really creates this great experience for teachers and students to kind of talk to one another in a way that's not always feasible in a classroom setting. I think it would be great if we had sort of a body, something like what we're trying to do here, that could come and offer professional development courses or conferences where people can go and talk about best practices in empathy teaching and in empathy, just overall, ways to go about, workplace empathy. I think increasing hands-on experiences would be great. Inclusion of IMC courses and participation, both for students but also for teachers and for workers, I think is huge. I think it can really change the way people view themselves and their colleagues. And I think increasing responsibilities for students through self-care. So, having having a group of students go out and do a wilderness hike and making them cook for themselves and clean up camp after themselves, that can be really huge too. And making them work together can, sort of help them, again, change how they view one another, and making them work as a unit and seeing each other in a different light really helps with the idea of, starting to build empathy. The end. Sorry
okay.
for my...
Any thoughts on that, like how to build on that, or kind of concrete ideas to build on team building or hands-on experiences?
Well, it made me think about some of the like the circle practices, the art of hosting practices, the open space technologies, and in particular, I made a little post-it for strategic questioning, which is the work of Fran Peavy, but that there's so much, that part of professional development is helping people access their own wisdom, And any of those tools and practices that do that, I think, can be very powerful.
Okay, any others going? Okay, then I'll jump in next. I just had the pink one. So it was, the idea was to create an ongoing design series on the theme of building a toolkit. So the what we kind of have here is we want to collect and create the most effective tools possible. So what I'm kind of envisioning is this toolkit, and that to create the toolkit, we can kind of do what we're doing right now, keep designing against or on that theme. So we're we're kind of doing it. So it's really about creating a toolkit, a resource, like a web-based resource that we put ideas into and gather the best practices and and so that was one. And the other was to actually prototype it. It would be great to have a school that we can use as a prototype to test out some of these ideas. Helen? So anyway, those were just some quick ideas. And the other one was, is a best practice is empathy maps. So I didn't mention that before. I forgot to mention that one, there's, I put that, oh, for some reason it's not going up there, but there's this notion, one of the practices is empathy maps, and I put a little empathy map there on the screen. So those are mine. Any thoughts about that? Want to jump in on?
Well, for me, it reminds me that I actually have been with colleagues developing a design. I didn't, I'm just not putting the pieces together, but I developed, with some colleagues, we've developed a design approach, a prototyping approach that uses the constellations process as a kind of living laboratory. So when you go through a design process, you can get into a place where once you've reimagined or re-envisioned something, you actually can step into the field again with some of these new design ideas and start to feel into how some of the pieces of your new vision are relating to each other, or maybe where they're not relating, and it helps get a kind of empathic understanding of your ideas.
Okay, so it's kind
I'll
of like
find that and share that.
It's like we have some rough toolkit of it, and then we take roles within that. We take roles of the toolkit and we kind of embody it and have some dialogues. Yeah. So do a constellation exercise of the toolkit. Okay, other ideas? Going once, twice, three times. So the next one, the orange.
That's me. So I kind of said a little bit about what Jonathan and you said about communicate with researchers. So kind of get what we have available and or collaborate with what we have available. And I think a lot of times some people might be hesitant to share knowledge, but participating in this group, is totally not that. But so just continuing to share knowledge and finding what we have available. I think we also need to define these tools and teachings in order to teach empathy. We have to kind of define the tools of that, and do we focus on empathy skills such as down here, self-awareness, active listening, perspective taking, mindfulness, teamwork? Are we using skills, or these kind of empathy skills, and providing teachers with how to teach that, or are there or principles? Like what's that connection, that line of connection? What is it? What does it look like? And then we need to share these. I also think these tools need to be colorful and fun and engaging. Maybe through workshops, maybe through activities, maybe through a toolkit. it's important for us to create safe and welcome environments via ... Is, are we using empathy practices to create this? Are we creating the environment first and then letting empathy practices come into play? Are they different? Are they not? And I think we need to practice empathy via project-based learning, service learning, projects, and human-centered design. And then I threw in this restorative practice because that's new on my radar research, and I think it has a lot to do with empathy and the whole how might we create.
It's something that came up around that. Oh, getting a bit of an echo. Jonathan, you're getting quite an echo from your. Okay.
Sorry. Better now, or?
Let me testing. Yeah, it's better now. It was quite okay. The idea was to hold something I've been thinking about is like support empathy circles. So I set one up for next week to start. It's around sharing fears, stresses, and anxieties. And so I'm just imagining having an empathy circle around that, so teachers can have a circle around to share their stresses, because when you share a stress and you get heard, it's transforming that cortisol, which is the stress, into oxytocin. So that's kind of the pitch, is transforming cortisol into oxytocin. And so I was imagining that, as well as the imaginative empathy or constellation work, kind of including that into like a support circle. So that was just something I was kind of excited about. Any other ideas pop in?
Yeah, I think for me, connecting with, similar to what you were saying, and connecting with Helen, what you said about the, like why people might be hesitant. That I think the question, I think, Vince, that you asked about, well, when was the time you felt most heard? That it allows a person to connect with the power through their own experience, the power of empathy, and that's a great way to begin to sort of break down whatever hesitance people might. But those are questions like those to help break down that hesitance.
So like positive empathy stories sharing. Okay, then the next one.
I think I'm next. Am I not?
Is that the teal or whatever blue color?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't know if I did a good brainstorming job, because all the time I was thinking, well, not, yeah, most of the time I was thinking about doing something that's like having materials which are acceptable for everybody. Because a few days ago, someone told me that her principal was kind of scared of meditation and all these weird things. It's like I want it to be mainstream, and so okay, so that's something on the background of my thinking, having something that's not weird or denominational or something like that, or religious, or I don't know. People may think that. So some things, some other things. So having freely available materials is already said. You mentioned this website, so that's it. And I think that this is not the problem nowadays. We have a lot of materials. So working on teams in school and between and among schools, I mean, to like refine what active listening or empathy buddies or whatever programs we may have. So people like specialize in one aspect and then share with other people in a school and between schools. Then collaboration between schools, I think, is very important. So you see how they use these materials or how they have tweaked their implementation, and this goes also for visiting other schools and like living how they live, and like really seeing things that you are just imagining when you see the materials. Using evidence-based materials would mean like really like rating the materials, or like, I don't know, like voting in some way, or really making it very evidence-based. So seeing if they do what they are supposed to do. Having fairs to present materials, I think it's nice to just have fairs, so people can walk around, people can explain. I mean, fairs, conferences, but fairs seems like more adapted to the school culture, I think. Relate materials to their impact on learning goes to this mainstream thing I was saying before. So to me, it's important to say, like, these are materials, so students are more like in contact with their bodies, so they are more calm, so they can learn better, which is critical for some people who are very scared of wasting like instruction time. So really, like, again, this kind of rating the materials and stressing their impact on learning in a evidence-based way, of course, not just like I think or I dreamt that that was going to be very useful. Okay, so trainings should be experiential always, and well, mostly at least, and materials should be like colorful, of course, fun, and then experiential, because otherwise I think that the impact won't be very strong. And then yeah, wasting time. Yeah, so these are my thoughts.
Yeah, when you're talking about wasting time, there's this thing about you have to work, you have to be stressed, and
Yeah.
somehow addressing that, it's like I'm almost
Sure.
imagining like a constellation work around I am fear of wasting time, somebody is empathy, and wasting time and empathy have a constellation dialogue with each other, something like that. I actually call that imaginative empathy, where you can do like role play. So really going into and having these role plays between all these different concepts, I think, would be really rich.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I just added a piece about language. It's really the same as what you're saying in terms of
Yeah.
mainstream. I just, I'm aware just from my own work that developing finding that a words that are accessible and authentic to the work really makes a big difference.
And whenever you're talking about visiting other schools, I think there are a lot of resources out there. And Edwin mentioned them at the beginning, of schools that are doing similar things. So that's a great first start. There's also a network. Ashoka has a network of change-making schools. That's another one. And just a blank on my third one. But yeah, so there's all these schools out there that are doing this, and so I think it'd be cool to maybe incorporate that into a toolkit of what's doing or who's doing what and grade level, or maybe incorporate that somehow and categorize it, make it easy for people. CASEL, anybody heard of CASEL? CASEL?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Emotional education.
And they have all this best practices with by schools as well. So that's a great first step. And another thing, I think one of the first things you talked about is trying to get buy-in. Where was the circle? Buy-in based on I went the wrong way. Yeah, having freely available materials in order to kind of gain support and traction. And I think that, I don't know if you said this, but I wrote it down, make it less weird. I don't know if you said that or I heard, just
No,
imagined.
he said that.
He did?
He did.
Okay, good. Yeah, and so, I don't know, I can't help but think, what's the assessment piece when it comes to this. And because I feel like having the evidence there is huge. So what is the assessment piece? So that's my yes for that.
Just to speak to that, I think that there's a real point to that, and I think that there are certainly schools that will already, and I mean, Evan can speak to, you know, my experiences from the other day that I shared, but I've taught in quite a few sort of different end of the spectrum schools, and there are schools that are already, you know, incorporating a lot of these practices, and then there's schools that are open to incorporating a lot of these practices, and then there are schools that are kind of at the opposite end of the spectrum where they're very traditional. And like right now, I work at a Catholic school, and one of my coworkers is, you know, she's very into yoga, she's very into mindfulness, and other teachers there who have been there longer, who are more traditional, like very much look at her like she's, I don't know, like going the Catholic mission of the school or some crazy, you know, ridiculous thing. Not that we all have to be Catholic. I am not Catholic, but you know, like the people who are there and who are very traditional and who are very like, you know, like pounding away at this like mission of the school, like very much think that she's like kind of hokey and out there just because she's, you know, trying to incorporate mindfulness into her classroom and trying to incorporate yoga and like, you know, breathing exercises into her classroom. So like it's not out there that there are some schools that would be like, mindfulness is weird, we're not doing this. So, you know, it's not like there's not teachers who are just like, mindfulness is against Jesus, because there is. So he's absolutely right, there are people who would push back that hard.
Well, that's a whole, like a whole design challenge is how might we address kind of pushback to empathy in the schools or something like that. So that can be a whole design. We can design around that too. Okay, thank you. Just for time, shall we move on to the next one? Who was the?
This is mine. It's Allison. So a lot of this has already been said. So I'm going to skip. And I'm going to skip to a few things. First, I think in a lot of ways, Edwin, you sort of are embodying how I would see creating this toolkit. But that the idea of there being multimedia presentations, so that there's both the documents of the practices but also videos and as well testimonials, so that there's different levels of evidence. You know, there's data. I have evidence also in here, but I think the storytelling is as powerful, perhaps more powerful than data in a lot of ways. So, evidence of how empathy creates joy, transformation, meaning. So that, you know, I know we have it. Well, so I'll stop talking there. You get it. Find practices that bring empathy into content areas, interdisciplinary empathy. And then I wrote also, based on the previous conversation, we introduce the tools in ways that address concerns and fears.
Okay, what was coming up for me, I forgot to mention this for the last one about the Start Empathy in the Ashoka, is actually to develop what we're doing right here and do a whole series of these and keep designing towards this toolkit and actually reach out to Ashoka and see if they would, and Start Empathy and any of these other organizations that would like to take part, and we create this ongoing design project. And the folks from Live Different, those folks in Canada, so that's kind of one thing I'm looking at is, can we do what we're doing here and keep designing, bring people from all over the world together to develop this toolkit. Okay, was there any other ideas? So what we have here, okay, and I don't want to jump in right too fast, but any other ideas? Like, of all this, what kind of resonates the most with you? Like, we want to create a prototype of something now, like a really quick prototype. What kind of resonates with you around this? like what kind of a prototype would you want to create? Of all these ideas, which one would you want to create to actualize? Can we just go around, maybe starting with Vince this time, start at the other end of the scale?
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question. So maybe
Well, we
I could
have all
answer
these.
second.
Oh, we have all these ideas. So we're going into our next stage is the
Yeah,
prototyping.
it's not about English. It's about what you are asking us to do.
Yeah,
What you're asking us to choose,
you're wanting kind of more clarity around what it is we're choosing, needing to
or maybe
choose.
to go second or third. So
Okay.
I would request that.
Okay. Then, like, Helen, shall we go? Of these ideas, which one are you the most excited about, and would want to turn into reality?
I think I'm most excited about um, finding the practices and the tools um, in order to share. I guess maybe finding out what's working. I mean, I feel like that's what a lot of my research has been, but I still have they're kind of all over the place. So maybe more structure, or there are a lot of ideas, but they're not really the hows. That's what I've noticed.
So it's creating a research project to find the tools and the hows.
Could find it. Research project. Research project to
Does that
find.
resonate, or
To like to provide more structure, I guess.
so a structured research project, or creating a structure?
Tools, like structured hows. So there's a lot of like this. You should do this. You should do that. I'm guessing. I mean, here I'll keep building off of it, and we can come back.
Okay. Jonathan, you got any? What resonates in terms of?
Yeah. Well, I do have a bias towards trying to collect as much information that's out there. What is actually being done, what kind of tools are already out there. But then the next thing is to know which ones are most effective. So I think there is a big gap in actual research to look at the actual effects, the actual effectiveness of these different tools. I mean, that could be a huge research project in itself. What are the most effective ways of teaching empathy? So this really determines whether you include that or not. Really determines the whole scale of the project. But there's probably a lot of more, let's say, anecdotal evidence around that you can get by interviewing people about what seems to be effective. If you look for actual proper studies that are looking, at effects over a year, over 2 years, I mean, that's going to be a lot more difficult to find. I don't think there's all that much out there.
Okay,
so,
is it research, collect ideas, and sort ideas by effectiveness?
Yeah, I mean, ideally you want it to be as scientific as possible. So you probably have to find some sort of my idea, I guess, and I'm just thinking this through as I'm talking, would be to interview as many people as possible that have tried out these different tools and get some sense of their own subjective sense of effectiveness. It's not the best kind of research you can do, but it may be a way of making use of what's already out there.
Okay. And do interviews on effective methods.
Yeah, a survey. I would use that word survey. Yeah.
Okay. Do a survey of effective methods.
Yeah, survey practitioners. Speak to people that have been introducing empathy and compassion into schools. I mean, there are networks. There are compassionate schools programs. The Charter for Compassion has led one of those efforts. So to actually speak with school staff and find out what kinds of exercises have been most effective.
Okay, Gray, do you have?
I think that, so what I think is a really exciting thing is sort of taking all of this, what you guys are saying, and sort of putting it together, and just the sheer idea of creating an organization, like what you're talking about with international empathy trainers, and using that organization to bring people together, where we can collaborate and do this research, and then take that research out into the world. And by taking those studies and that research out into the world, that in and of itself will create toolkits, and it will also bring like a higher level of legitimacy to the practice of empathy in schools and businesses. And so that will actually help buy-in. And so that is going to lead to change. And then that can actually lead to a shift in the organization's mission to become more of a, still doing research and everything, but also to add a component of training and, going into that idea of having conferences and, running professional development and stuff like that. I think that's a really exciting idea.
Okay, so the creation of an organization to do conferences.
And publish research and really help to lend legitimacy and, get the word out there about how important this is, I guess.
Okay, so what we're doing is we have all these ideas, and the next phase is to prototype one of these ideas, and we're sort of working towards the prototyping now. Like, we want to create something. What is something simple that we can create from all these ideas? And we're getting a sense of, looks like moving towards research, and creating an organization. I kind of like the idea of maybe if we're creating an organization to create more of these mini design workshops and to do next step workshops. That's kind of what I'm kind of doing anyway. Because there's this one we're doing here is 3.5 hours, which it's like we're just getting pretty much just a taste of the design process. There's another workshop which is like a 8-hour one, and then there's actually the 7-week one. So we could even create an organization that creates these workshops. For example, we can do and use the design to gather research. Because we've kind of gathered some research here. We've heard what everyone thinks. What their needs are, different ideas. We've got the constellation ideas. We've got the circle process. We've got different ideas within the schools. We've got kind of the compassion and animal piece. So so what is like a real? So that would be kind of like one kind of suggestion. So the thing is, like, let's say if we had 5 minutes, what could we create in 5 minutes? And this is the hard part. Sometimes, you kind of go through the groan zone, right? It's like you got time pressures. It's like, oh, what do we come up with? But that's part of it to empathize our way through the groan zone.
Well, the questions. Sorry.
That's what you got.
It's like, well, the question is, it's almost like how ambitious this effort is going to be, and do we want to do something which will create? Would we want to start do we want to get a lot of momentum going towards something very ambitious? If you think really ambitious, it's how do you get the best practice and toolkits spread to as many schools around the world as possible? Are we defining it in that sense? Are we going to start with a small step first of all? Or?
Oh, we need it. We can do it in 5 minutes. We've got 5 minutes to create something. So,
Right. Right,
so
but
that,
we can, we can say let's create a structured. Yeah. Go ahead.
okay, here. I didn't. I kind of moved directly into this, but we're moving into the prototyping. So the idea with the prototyping is that we don't want to create the whole thing. Within design, you learn by creating a quick prototype and then testing the prototype. And you want even a rough, really super rough. It doesn't matter. We want to have quick, rapid prototypes and not kind of have this sense of perfection. So, so that's why we've got 5 minutes to create something really rough. So what are we creating?
What comes to my mind first is, we've said about what's out there, what's the research out there, and these ideas. So maybe we could share, 3 things that we've learned and what studies have, enlightened us. One idea.
One thought I have would be the survey piece. I think I'm curious about what, if we need evidence, what kinds of questions do we even begin to ask about effective practices? That's another thought.
Okay, how is this? We've got, we can form 2 groups here within 5 minutes, or even do both of them, right? Let's write down 3 things that you have learned, and then also some interview questions. And then we can test the interview questions by interviewing somebody. And somehow that got deleted. What was our question here? Like what are 3 things
that you learned?
What are 3 things you learned? For what? You learned about what? And you're muted, Allison.
That wasn't mine, but Helen, do you remember what was this? This was your question or your thought.
What 3 things that you've learned or effective teaching practices of empathy?
Okay.
Like,
what are 3
learned them, or what? Or what did we learn in this conversation, or
what are 3 teaching practices of empathy that you've read about, researched, learned?
Okay, we'll just fill those out and then. Okay, we've got 40 seconds left for this part. Oops. I think I wiped out somebody's.
oh God, where did my thing go?
Okay, that was the time for that. So we're moving fast. So 3 things that you learned about teaching empathy practices. So I just added 2. Active listening and role playing. So that's the constellation work. So those 2 really, I think, are super powerful. Does anyone else want to share theirs?
A lot of my research says that it's very important to create the conditions that contribute to social and emotional learning through school-wide. That's also it's classroom and school-wide. And it's important to create a common language, goals, and strategies within the school.
Okay, next. Just go around, share your 3 things.
I wrote down, in addition to constellation, which has been said, but interdisciplinary empathy. And then the other thing, I think the other big thing that I learned just through my own work is that there are so many hidden or misunderstood motivations, and that empathy can help to reveal those.
Okay, Gray.
Sorry, it wasn't typing before. I wrote down inquiry education, student as a co-creator of knowledge, and then my third one is connection to nature as a way to highlight interconnectedness of everything.
Okay, Vince.
I just took this need to include empathy in content areas, this interdisciplinary thing.
Okay, and Jonathan.
Yeah, I didn't actually have anything to add that was separate. Yeah, I was looking more at the effective questions task, so I don't really have anything to add here.
Okay, so we had the second part of our prototype, which might be the one we can actually implement, which is a survey. And so what are some questions? What questions should we ask about effective practices? I actually mentioned the survey, the first one was actually what 3 things have you learned about teaching empathy practices? So they kind of like made the connection there. And then the other one, use our design questions. When we first started the meeting, we came up with a whole series of questions already about that could be used in our survey. So Jonathan, do you want to go into yours?
I have, well, the 2 key questions I wrote so far were how do you measure effectiveness, and what are the biggest obstacles, and what works.
Okay. Vince, did you have?
Well, one not very scientific one. What practices bring more happiness to your school?
Okay, great.
If speaking to a student, what engages you?
Helen?
Walk me through a successful day using your concept to teach empathy.
And Allison?
Mine is about perspective taking, so asking a student to describe an experience of taking another perspective of another.
Okay. So what we did now is we created a questionnaire, basically. So we could take this, to test this, we could actually write this out and actually go and test it with our community and bring back the data from this. So this would be, the questionnaire is actually the prototype that we want to test. Like, how are and then we would redesign around this questionnaire. Like, well, how is this questionnaire really working? And we would, ask people, hey, are these good questions? Or, then we could redesign this questionnaire for our inquiry. So actually, the prototype that we have is this questionnaire, I would say. And then let me bring that up. So let's see. So we would actually go out and test it, which we're not doing. That would be the last stage here is we have our prototype of a questionnaire that we won't be. So we're kind of doing research around empathy. We would go out and test it, and then we would gather insights. You know, what worked about this idea, about the questionnaire? What worked? What would we change? What new ideas do we have for improving the questionnaire? And what questions came up, and what did you think about? You know, what questions came up for us? So that is actually the prototype we have, is a questionnaire to gather research. And the process, so in this process we've gone through, we didn't quite test it, but in a sense we tested it because we interviewed each other, so we have a little bit of a test there. But here we have the design is iterative, and so we keep going through the design process until we get a refined product, service, experience, or culture created. And so we've gone through the empathy phase. We went through the defining a problem. We went into the brainstorming. We created our prototype, which was a questionnaire. Our next stage would be to test the questionnaire out in, you know, out in a school or somewhere, and then to start the process again to refine our questionnaire. And that's it. And we're kind of got about 4 minutes. The process. So how was that for everyone? We kind of ran out of time for writing in. I was going to get like, what did you like about the process? What do you wish for? And what if? Maybe we can just go around and just share that without writing it, just for time reasons.
You mean the process of the actual workshop?
The actual process of this whole design workshop. Like, what did you like? What do you wish for? And, you know, what if we did something else, or what else could we add?
Yeah.
And I'll stop the sharing.
I can go.
Okay.
See if I can get back to your page. So I really appreciate everything you had set up here and the way you set up these templates. It's quite really impressive, Edwin, and as I said, it's a really wonderful to see this approach used in this way, this virtual way. Thought it was very effective. I can definitely, it's exhausting. I'm tired. But I really appreciate the whole arc of it. I actually don't know that I have any wishes, I think, in terms of differences, but I will definitely say that I felt, you know, this final piece about the survey for me personally is a great way. It's a great piece to prototype. It feels very accessible, and I love the idea of the potential, because I think the evidence-based piece actually is at the heart of a lot of the issues that we're facing and bringing the work out, and so this idea of having a survey and surveying practitioners is a really great way to start to build that evidence.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to jump in?
Yeah, I like how we're able to hear so many ideas in such a short time frame, especially the fact that it's digital. I think that's really cool. I wish for there to be maybe an opportunity or an area or space for us to continue this conversation. I don't know if that's available through your website, or if we created a Facebook page or something like that. I actually have a Facebook page if y'all want to join, and it's just every article that I've read and blog and research. Yeah, just like, I don't know, it's a cool thing that I would love to invite y'all to if y'all would like to join. I forgot the other ones. I wish.
What if?
Oh. Well, I'm not supposed to ever ask that question. What if we had more time? Or more opportunities like this?
Okay, great. Sounds like you're about to speak, Vince.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I liked very much the workshop. So I think it was amazing that we could do so many things in so little time. So I thought that was very, very effective. Probably I wish I could go more slowly through all the steps. And what if, at least myself, I take one of these longer workshops?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah.
I like all of these workshops. I think it's great to be able to get opinions from people all over the world, really. You know, in the past two online things that I've done, you know, I've talked to people from India and London and Brazil. So I think it's great to have people with different backgrounds from different places who are working on different things to just sort of be able to weigh in and hear where they're coming from. I think it's huge and it's eye-opening to get different perspectives. Um, and I think that's great. And I think the way that you set it up is really accessible, which is great. You know, with the mural thing is really cool. And I was like freaking out about it and like telling my friends, I'm like, have you ever used Mural? This is really cool. It's like better than Google Docs. Um, so I really like it. And I think like, you know, what if Bray, you know, I think it would be amazing to be able to take what we're doing and to move it out into, you know, a bigger realm, you know, design a survey, a longer survey, a real survey that we can take, and we can take to students and to coworkers, and then, you know, get back together and actually look at these answers and like, you know, have a workshop on those answers, you know, like what, you know, the people that can go out and ask students and coworkers who are in education to answer these questions for us and say, you know, we brought these back to you, like, let's talk about this now and see what we can do with that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Jonathan, I guess you're in the dark.
I'm in the dark here. Yeah, the sun's going down here. Vincent has got the light on. I don't. Yeah. No, first of all, yeah, I appreciate your setting up the workshop. I mean, I just found out about it actually this morning, and and I was really happy to jump in and join. It's been a really good learning experience for me. I mean, of course, I've known about the whole concept of iterative design, but just doing a hands-on exercise like this on something that I care about has been really useful. Just as a way of, you know, seeing how you can collect ideas and organize them and streamline them towards something concrete. You know, I've had the idea of actually doing a toolkit to spread compassion in schools, and so this really, I've sort of put that whole idea, I'd put it a bit aside, and I'm excited again now about potentially collaborating and maybe putting some of the stuff I've collected together, and we may be able to actually create a really powerful project like this, because I think there's a real need. You know, in terms of real toolkits, I've looked around. I haven't looked exhaustively at what's there, but I mean, the Ashoka toolkit seems to be one of the main things for teaching empathy, and it's not that comprehensive. It's like specific exercises. It doesn't really go through the whole thing about how to approach schools and how to create a whole culture. It's more like little exercises you can do. So I think there's a huge need, and you know, we've done a bit more than scratching the surface, but there's a huge potential here, and so I think it would be great if this turned into something larger, and we could stay in touch and maybe turn this into a real project with a very tangible outcome that can really be used throughout the world. I mean, we need this.
Nice. Okay, thank you for that. I think Allison?
I went first.
Oh, you went first. Did everybody speak? Okay, I guess that's me then. So what I like is this is kind of the beginning of this idea of using design geared towards building a school culture. So this is the first group. This is like the little tiny snowball. So I'm really looking at getting this snowball rolling. On the 28th, I'm doing another design workshop like this with the folks from Live Different. So that's the school group that's in 300 schools in Canada that they want to bring this empathy in the schools, and that this process itself, I like the process we're doing is also the process that helps foster empathy. So, you know, why we learn these skills is sort of, I don't know, there's a word for that, but it kind of builds in on itself. And so I'd like to actually do these ongoing, like maybe every week, offer some of the 8-hour ones, which will really go into depth again. This here we're just basically touching. This is just introducing. Like everybody now knows how to do use the mural. You're kind of more familiar with it, so there's a real learning curve to start using all the tools here. And so everyone here is starting to learn those tools. Next time around, it'll be easier and easier, and we can go into more and more depth. So I really like and feel hopeful and enthusiastic that we can get this snowball rolling and bring in more organizations and keep designing towards it. And I wish everyone would be involved in future, versions of this and help get the word out and kind of have it grow. And I do want to create a separate website for kind of this empathy, building an empathy culture, toolkit that we can keep designing and working on it. And I really like is that we have this all recorded. So all this material, we've got written recordings of all the ideas, all those questions, all those ideas have all been documented, and others can, build on that. So I really like that it's sort of this kind of, building process. And so yeah, I feel pretty excited and really grateful for all of you, jumping in and taking a chance and taking part in this. And so I hope we can keep the ball rolling. I think that it's in August 4th is the next date. So if you want to sign up for that, I think there's still spaces. And even if you want to help create this, that we can schedule, bring in friends. You can learn the process and teach it to others and stuff like that. We can keep, building this whole toolkit. So that's the what if. What if we did that? So that's it. Great. So that's kind of it for me. I think we just went a few minutes over, but we can leave it at that. Any final thoughts or?
If we want to connect, how should we connect?
We have everyone's email. Your email with a reply to.
Okay.
I think it'd be really good to take this onto the Empathy Trainers Association site so that that can be kind of like the forum for connecting, and then there's the Empathy Trainers Facebook group, and if you want to post your site too, and you can send an email out. I don't know if you can introduce yourself to the Trainers Association and send any resources, or do that on the Facebook group page too. And next week, I'm also you're welcome to, I want to experiment with the fear-based or the stress-based empathy circle. So I got setting up a workshop. I want to get like 4 people, 5 people that want to do just empathic listening. There's no project, no nothing, just talking about stresses and strains we have in our own lives. So it's more of a personal support process, turning cortisol stress into oxytocin.
That's not going to be the one on Wednesday, right? That's separate from the one on Wednesday, correct?
I think that's next week. Is that Wednesday? It's on the 12th, which is Tuesday. Yeah, that's not the IETA meeting. That's a whole different meeting at 11. And I had sent a link about that. You can email me if you're interested, and I can send it to you again.
Thank you so much. This has been really wonderful, and I'd be happy to stay connected with folks. So.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, great.
Thank you. Yeah, me too.
Me too.
Thanks for creating space.